From cyber pioneer to drug-addicted conspiracy theorist to presidential candidate to whistleblower, John McAfee had one crazy life. And just like what happens during any story, the end is always paramount. This is the wild story of John McAfee, along with his mysterious end.
The press is notoriously inaccurate.
Why does power corrupt?
And I had more hiding places around that property and on San Pedro than you could possibly imagine.
I mean, it's always there. It's watching. It's been watching me for years. Every time I turn on the fucking computer, it's there looking at me.
Governments are going to lose revenue if they're taxing income. Banks are going to lose their entire business.
I used to sell drugs because if you take enough drugs, the only way you can support your habit is to sell to others.
It's a semi-automatic weapon.
Had I shown up, I would have been arrested. The entire conference was moved to Hong Kong.
If you are a marijuana smoker, I would vastly prefer you switch to heroin.
You know, something went wrong. 15 years ago, I had some beautiful software and they took it over. I don't know what they did. It was like the time I hired that Bangkok prostitute to do my taxes while I fucked my accountant.
John McAfee, found dead today in a prison cell in Spain. The founder of the antivirus software that bears his name had just been ordered extradited to the United States on tax evasion charges. He faced up to 30 years in prison if convicted. He was 75, and a wild ride of a life it was.
John McAfee was born in Cinderford, United Kingdom, on September 18, 1945, on an army base to his American father, Don McAfee, and his British mother, Joan Williams. When he was 15, his father, who was described as an abusive alcoholic, committed suicide with a gun. John had spent his whole childhood living in fear that a beating from his father could happen at any time, and struggled to make any sense of why this was happening to him. However, his traumatic childhood did not hold him back from achieving his goals later in life. In his early 20s, McAfee received a bachelor's degree in mathematics. During his first years in the workforce, he bounced around many computer programmer jobs, including most notably when he was employed as a programmer by NASA's Institute for Space Studies in New York City from 1968 to 1970, working on the Apollo space program. During this time, he had developed a love for drugs, in particular LSD. He claimed he would drop a hit of acid in the morning before going to work for the day. On another occasion, he even experimented with a psychedelic called DMT. He ended up snorting the entire bag of the substance. Within an hour, my mind was shattered, he stated, adding that he went to work but couldn't concentrate and wound up hiding behind a garbage can hearing voices. During this time, around 1983, he was snorting lines of cocaine at work daily, as well as selling it to his subordinates at the engineering company he worked for. He was also popping barbiturate-like quaaludes and drinking scotch throughout the afternoon. Eventually, he sobered up, and by the mid-1980s, had landed a job as a software engineer for Lockheed. In 1986, while employed by Lockheed, he read about the brain virus in the Mercury News. This was the first computer virus for the PC, and he found it absolutely terrifying. He went about creating an antivirus software that could detect a computer virus and remove it automatically. In 1987, McAfee founded McAfee Associates Inc., which sold his program, the first antivirus software on the market. Initially, he was not expecting users to pay much for this, but rather wanted to make people aware of the need to be protected from computer viruses. By making people fear such malware, he managed to generate millions in sales, and by 1990, he was making $5 million a year. By 1994, John McAfee had stepped down as chief executive and sold his remaining stake in the company. McAfee was involved in a few other software endeavors, but none nearly went to the scale of the antivirus software attributed to his name. During this time, John spent most of his time living it up. The millionaire was known from the 90s to his death as a wild character. I'm looking at the script trying to find a way to describe this man, John McAfee, and all I can think of to describe him is Donald Trump and Uncle Sam's drug-addicted brother. The reason? Well, to start with, the man did a lot of drugs and is very open about it. But also the man didn't think before he spoke or acted. He is the embodiment of the American dream, testosterone leaking from the armpits, no forward-thinking, spontaneous entity that every man wishes they could be on the deepest level, but because of societal norms and manners, we are unable to be. He was most well known for cohorting with wild women, waving around guns, manufacturing drugs, filming sloppy cocktail videos on his boat, and discussing the finer points of fornicating with whales. However, this lifestyle would catch up to McAfee. On the 12th of November 2012, Belize police began to search for McAfee as a person of interest in connection to the homicide of Gregory Fowle, who was found dead of a gunshot wound the day before at his home. According to the reports, Gregory had poisoned McAfee's dogs, which then gave McAfee probable cause. However, McAfee claimed it was a hit made by an organization that was targeting McAfee but killed his neighbor by mistake. McAfee said that he was afraid to go to the police because they would kill him and refused their routine questions and evaded them. He even buried himself in the sand for several hours with a cardboard box over his head. Belize's prime minister is quoted in calling him extremely paranoid, even bonkers. He fled to Guatemala in secret. However, during this time, he was visited by Vice Editor-in-Chief Rocco Castoro. This would soon prove to be a costly mistake. Here's why. Most people don't know that most digital cameras these days will write a certain amount of data to any photo they take. This data is known as EXIF data, which is short for Exchangeable Image File Format. Most photography-focused social media sites like Flickr will show this data, and you can even look at this data on the file on your computer. One of the datas written to these files is the longitude and latitude of where the photo is taken. However, obviously John McAfee, being a former cybersecurity company CEO, would know this, right? Well, that's right. However, when Vice visited McAfee, they took this photo with the two posing together. The photo was posted in an article about the encounter and McAfee's time on the run on the Vice website. And wouldn't you guess it? That pesky EXIF data exposed to the feds exactly where and when the photo was taken. McAfee and Vice claimed the location was changed on purpose. However, nobody was falling for it. He then appeared publicly in Guatemala City, where he unsuccessfully sought political asylum. He was then arrested for illegally entering Guatemala. He was taken to a detention center to await deportation to Belize. The next day, McAfee had 2 minor heart attacks in the detention center and was hospitalized. McAfee later said he faked the heart attacks to buy time for his attorney to file a series of appeals that ultimately prevented his deportation to Belize, thus speeding up the process that the government's decision was to send him back to the United States. The circuit court in Orlando, Florida dropped all charges. However, they refused to dismiss a wrongful death lawsuit against him for Gregory's death, and McAfee paid $25 million to the man's estate. In 2015, John decided it was time for a change in his life, so he decided he would try to run for the President of the United States. He advocated the decriminalization of marijuana, an end to the war on drugs, non-interventionism in foreign policy, a free market economy which does not redistribute wealth, and is also quoted in saying taxation was theft. Don't worry, we'll dive into that more in a little bit. However, his dreams would be crushed when McAfee came second in the primaries and third at the 2016 Libertarian National Convention. In January 2019, the IRS claimed that McAfee had not posted a tax return in 5 years, and they were coming for McAfee for tax evasion. So McAfee did what he did best. He ran. He announced to the world he was living internationally on his boat. This went well for McAfee for almost 2 years. until October 5th, 2020. He was caught at the airport while trying to take a flight out of the country to Turkey. The SEC filed a further complaint alleging McAfee promoting cryptocurrencies in a pump and dump scheme that netted McAfee $23 million. McAfee was jailed in Spain pending extradition to the United States. He remained there for many months. On the 23rd of June 2021, the Spanish National Court authorized his extradition to face charges in Tennessee. McAfee allegedly committed suicide several hours after the authorization by hanging in a cell. He was 75 years old. However, here comes the conspiracy. In 2019, McAfee tweeted, "I've collected files on corruption in governments. For the first time, I'm naming names and specifics. I'll begin with the corrupt CIA agents and 2 Bohemian officials coming today. If I'm arrested or disappear, over 31 terabytes of incriminating data will be released to the press." Later that same year, he also tweeted a message about suicide, accompanied by a picture of the phrase "schwacked" tattooed on his arm. He stated, "Getting subtle messages from U.S. officials saying, in effect, 'We're coming for you, McAfee. We're going to kill yourself. I got a tattoo today just in case. If I suicide myself, I didn't. I was whacked. Check my right arm.'" In 2020, after his arrest in Spain, McAfee tweeted about suicide again. "I am content in here. I have friends. The food is good. All is well. Know that if I hang myself, lay Epstein, it will be no fault of mine."
John McAfee was not suicidal. I spoke with him a few hours before he was found dead. We spoke about the court's decision to extradite him to the U.S. It did not come as a surprise to either of us. We were prepared for that decision and had a plan of action already in place to appeal that decision. I blame the U.S. authorities for this tragedy. Because of these politically motivated charges against him, my husband is now dead. His last words to me were, "I love you and I will call you in the evening." Those words are not words of someone who is suicidal. All John wanted to do was spend his remaining years fishing and drinking. He did not deserve to die in a filthy prison like a caged animal. We knew that there would be an uphill battle to continue to fight this situation. But he's a fighter. He's always a fighter, and anybody that knows John, that knows him even a little bit, knows that about him. He would never quit this way. He would never take his life in this way. I didn't believe he did this, and I will get answers. I want answers of how this was able to happen.
His wife, Janice McAfee, a former prostitute who he met after cartel bosses paid her to spy on him, wrote a tweet on June 18, 2021, just a few days before his death. The U.S. authorities are determined to have John die in prison to make an example out of him for speaking out against the corruption within their government agencies. Another reason people have attributed this death to a conspiracy is that McAfee would sometimes talk about exposing an underground New World Order government. This was further backed by the Instagram account that belonged to McAfee, which posted a plain image of the letter Q minutes after news organizations reported his death. The Q is believed to be a reference to the QAnon conspiracy theory, whose followers believe former President Donald Trump was working to bring down a secret world order and child trafficking ring led by prominent Democrats and celebrities. These conspiracy theories may be proof to some. However, there is the other side. On June 10, 2021, after 8 months behind bars, 2 weeks before his death, McAfee tweeted in prison, "There is much sorrow in prison disguised as hostility." Now, from this tweet, could McAfee have been losing his drive? Even after his death, McAfee's lawyer was quoted in a statement, "The software mogul died by hanging and could not stand any more time in jail." This is the result of a cruel system that had no reason to keep this man in jail for so long. So was this murder by the US government or some other government agency or some other New World Order to keep McAfee from leaking private information and for overall being an untamable wild card? Could this have been the pent-up sadness from a man who was about to spend all, if not most, of the rest of his life in prison? Or was this the ultimate troll from a man that just wants to watch the world stir from the other side? Was it for a dramatic end to a strange story of a wacky character named John McAfee that you won't soon forget? I'll let you decide. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please leave a like and maybe even subscribe for more great content. We do all the research so you don't have to. And as always, I'm Alex, and I hope you have a fantastic day.